introduce the first of our Day in the Life series. We decided to introduce this for the first time at Tech at Google to give you a bit of insight into the real lives of true, what we would call digital natives. So people who live and breathe digital are fantastic advocates and ambassadors of it. And the first of them that I'd like to introduce now is our colleague Reto Meier. He works as an Android developer and in true Google terms also has the title Android Developer Advocate. So he is a true advocate. Pre-Google was also a massive Android advocate and in fact has written a book on the very subject. He is the author of Professional Android Application Development. So in true social media terms, I thought I would share with you a customer review on Amazon. This is the best Android book so far. I can't share with you how many others there are, so they may be less great in comparison. But Rita, if you'd like to kick off a day in the life, please.
Thanks, Sarah. I can't tell you when that review was placed or how many books have been sold since then and how many of them may or may not be better, but at least one person was satisfied. So as Sarah says, I'm a developer advocate for Android at Google, and what that generally means is that the room full of people I usually address are all developers. They're all geeks like myself, less suits, more jeans, more t-shirts, more Red Bull. So a lot of the time what I'm doing is trying to show them the advantages of my particular technology. So for me it's Android, that's what I'm focused on. But more broadly at Google it's about mobile. And Simon's given some great insights today just about how pervasive mobile is and how much more so it's going to become in the future. We're talking about billions of people, and that's the sort of reach which is incredible for anyone, both from a sales and marketing perspective, but also for developers, which have this opportunity to reach out and offer their services and their products and the things that they've been working on to this huge market. So in terms of Android, this is sort of where we are now. It's been out for well, a year now. October 2008 we had the first device from T-Mobile. Today, 21 countries, 30 plus carriers, some of which are in the room today. We've got 6 devices so far available around the world, and by the end of the year we're expecting 18 to 20. So we've got a lot of mobile people in the room today, both OEMs and carriers. So I don't have to tell you that the final quarter of this year is going to be a big one in terms of mobile, and particularly for Android. It's something which we've seen a lot of growth over the year as things have come out. The devices which have been out there have been well received. People have found them interesting, and now we're finding that a lot of people are really investing. And so we've got these devices and a lot more of very interesting ones coming out. What's really interesting about mobile at the moment for us is the way smartphones have really been adopted, particularly in the developed world. And as Simon said, again, it's something which we think is going to increase worldwide, is that people are going to want internet access. And that's what's been so interesting about smartphones, in that they offer access to the internet. And it's not just a side feature, which people sometimes think, oh yeah, that's a cool thing to use. It's what people are using their phones for. Internet access, using the web, using apps designed to connect to the cloud, all of these sorts of things. We're finding huge numbers of people genuinely engaging in those apps, in the mobile web, which is really changing the way people are using their mobiles, and it changes the way that we at Google as a company can connect to those users, and the same is true for many of you. So as an advocate, as a geek, as a book writer, what it comes down to is trying to make sure that the developers out there who are writing the apps are making use of as many of the features which are available on the phones. And it's things like GPS, which add context to applications, to what people are doing, that can really increase the benefit of the apps. It makes possible a lot of things which simply weren't beforehand. So at Google and with Android, our big priority is to make everything open. We want to try and find everything that you can put on a phone and make sure that that's available to every developer who wants to do something with it. Because you can get a room full of smart people and ask them, what should we do? What should we make available? What's going to be the biggest benefit for developers to make cool things for consumers? the end of the day, there's going to be people out there which come up with stuff much smarter than us that we would never have considered. So our whole philosophy is just to get everything and make it completely available, and then see what people come up with and go from there. So it's things like multitasking, background applications, map smash-ups. You know, we found that location for mobiles is obviously key. So things like GPS and things like maps can add a huge benefit to the user experience. So it's things like that, you know, which we try and focus on. So I'm not going to bore you with the details of Android for much longer. I'm going to switch to something much more interesting, which is what developers have done with some of this technology. But just to give you a bit of context, we've got well over 8,000 apps available. We've got some logos from some of the companies which are doing things. 15,000 developers registered on the Android market, which is a phenomenal number, and something I'm very proud of. And so it's a select few of these 15,000 which I try and work with and try and help them to make their apps the most compelling, the most interesting, the most useful as we possibly can. So I'm going to switch to the overhead projector. Brilliant. And just show you a couple of the apps which people, which I've been working with, have come up with. And what I like to do, there's sort of a few apps which I'm going to go through, which sort of shows an interesting evolution from the first app which is available on a particular vertical, and how that's evolved over time as people have found new features within the platform. So we'll start off with Quiet, which some of you may already be aware of. It's let's get it out orientation. There we go. So it's a review listings company. So you pick your location. You can already see up here it's figured out where we are, more or less, using the GPS information. Here it's well, we're inside, so it's going to use the cell ID rather than GPS, but that's something that is transparent to the user and to the developer. And you click a category, go with pubs and bars. A little early in the day, but nonetheless. Goes through, and you can see. So it's used your location, and it's just displaying possible options nearby. It tells you, the usual stuff you'd expect from a review site, as well as the useful contextual information of how far away you are. So that's great. That was sort of the first variation of, say, the web page where you go and say, show me a bunch of bars, and you have to type in where you are. This is saying, okay, well, we already know where you are, so here's the ones which are nearby. So that was really neat. And that was one of the first ones which we saw. Then this is actually one which was done in-house by Google. Same sort of thing, exactly the same concept, slightly different user interface. And it's more or less the same. It's got a picture, description, ratings, but it doesn't come out great here. But these little red indicators are arrows, which are using the internal compass to point to where that particular bar is. And what's really neat about this app, hopefully it'll work, as I spin it around, they may be too small, but you should see the little red tags will turn as the phone does. It's all real-time live compass stuff. So again, it's just sort of adding another thing. Like GPS, yeah, that's great, but I want to keep going forward on my way to wherever. I don't want to go backwards, so you've got the compass. It's really neat. So, progress. People are like, okay, that's cool, but it's still a list. Show me something a little more interesting. So Sagat put NRU together. Again, similar idea, but now they've gone, forget the list. That's not interesting enough. We're just going to give you a vertical view of the compass. So now you're in the middle. It's got your compass directions, and it's got the places nearby, but in a real-time compass. So again, when I spin this around, the locations change as well. So if you're holding this in your hand and you're walking around, you go, okay, well, what's that over there? What direction am I heading? And you can find a great place. And they all work in a similar way in terms of what you can do with them. So once you've found a place, let's go back to Climb. Once you've found a place, you can tie in all the details that you have into phone features. So you've got an address, you've got phone numbers, and you can interact with all of these so that you want to see where it is on the map. The compass is useful, but the map is more so. Bring it up on a map, and it tells you. And all of these integrated phone features you can access. And so it's making apps part of the phone so that you're extending the way the phone works. And we find this is really powerful because it means that users aren't thinking of these separate apps which they all run. They're just thinking of their phone, and their phone has this way of finding a place to eat or a place to drink or a place to find cheap petrol, or whatever it is, but it's just part of the phone. It becomes part of their lifestyle. They can't imagine being without it, which is how you sort of start off with your phone. People will, as Simon said, they'll go home if they've forgotten their phone there, because it's just that important to their lifestyle. The last one I'll show you, I'm going to go back to the computer, because this particular app doesn't demo very well, because the whole idea of it is that it uses the camera. It uses a process called augmented reality, which I'm not sure if many of you have come across. Maybe the people from IBM here have. But it's an intriguing idea. So the idea is it uses the camera on the phone to look at where you are, the compass to find out where you are, and then overlays information onto your screen based on points of interest around. So I'll let the developers speak for it. I'll try to.
Hello, my name is Philip Bruce. I'm one of the developers of Wikitude. I'm here close to Salzburg, Austria, and behind me we see a really beautiful building, and now we ask Wikitude what it is. So, this castle is 100 meters away. It's built in the Rococo style, and it's considered as National Historic Monument. I would like to explain augmented reality to you. Augmented reality means that the reality, as you see it now, is overlaid by computer-generated data.
So that's sort of the final step, if you like, of how to display information around you. And it's technologies like this which make it, it's a really intriguing field in which you can sort of endeavour, sort of from this very simple list to this video-driven augmented reality solution. And that's all happened within the space of much less than a year. Wikitude's application came out very, very early on in the process, but it just shows that there's all these possibilities and that technology can create things which perhaps aren't immediately obvious. And so our policy is to let people explore and experiment with whatever's available and see what they come up with. I think from both an apps and from a marketing perspective, it really gives you an opportunity to explore how you want to interact with your users. Exactly. So that's pretty much all I had to say. I don't know if we have any time for questions, or if anyone would have any which they want to ask. Yeah, absolutely. So if anyone has any questions about Android or apps or anything along those lines. Oh, yes?
What proportion of what proportion of the money made is kept by Android developers? How does that compare to other marketplaces?
Sure. For Android, the question was how does the rev share model work for Android compared to some of the other markets, the other companies? We do a straight 70-30 split, so it's 70% goes to the apps developers, 30% goes to the carriers, with a proportion of that taken to cover costs, which is almost a pseudo-industry standard at this point, I'd say. But it'll be interesting to see how that develops. But at the moment, it's 70% of the developers. Yes?
What's had a success with GPS and encompassing sensors you see getting developed in the next few years?
That's one of the, we have these big posters at Google which say, imagine if the web was 1,000 times faster, and one of them is, imagine if your mobile had 5 sensors. And that's pretty much the way we see it is that anything, everything. I've seen phone designs which have measurement tools built in. Light sensors is an obvious one. Voice search is something which we've launched on Donut, which is it's an incredible way to interact. So rather than having to type on the tiny phone keyboards, you just speak your request and it does the business. I've seen staff demoing things for visual search. So there's one company in which you take a photo of a painting and it will look up in its back end and tell you what painting it is and give you the Wikipedia information. So it's anything and everything. I think temperature sensors, distance, light, anything that you can think to sense. I think it's just someone being smart enough to come up with a chip and stick it in a phone which doesn't drain the battery in half an hour. I think that's really the barrier there. Otherwise, the more the merrier.
Thank you very, very much indeed, Reto.